grumbling, and I say, what the hell is this? They stand you out in the cold, and it's really, you don't go in the military. It's a son of a gun, particularly if you're an enlisted man. And they couldn't figure it out. I was from Detroit. These are guys from out of Kentucky and whatnot.
So
guys who knew how to shoot crow out of the sky.
5 seconds now, Harold.
What?
We're starting.
5 seconds.
Fine. Welcome back. We're doing a second hour here with our guests. We've been talking about things in a way in the first hour. We're now back, and so welcome back to the set, and we can pick up where we left off. What I would like you to do is to tell me, where do you think it is that we left off? What was the point?
Well,
what point had we come to with ironclad clarity that we can take to the bank?
Let's go to some new issues.
Oh, okay.
How about, another topic I led recently, I curated a topic recently on dialogue, the art of thinking together. The idea that when you're thinking alone, even when you're with somebody, but you're thinking alone, everything comes out of your memory, your convictions, your beliefs, your assumptions. But thinking together might be a way of dialoguing and conversing, exploring.
Wait a minute. Thinking together is one thing, but talking together, thinking is one thing, talking together is another.
Can human beings think together?
Yeah, it happens a lot. I think people do.
Yeah.
You also get people go crazy in certain situations and things like that.
So there's a book by William Isaacs. I don't think it's a great book, but he has a lot of really interesting ideas. And one of his ideas is that dialogue is sort of a better form of conversation than discussion or debate. With dialogue, you get to thinking together where new possibilities are created, new meanings. And with discussion, the participants may still have opinions and convictions, but they're open that they might be wrong, that it's not final. And
that would be a good thing for there to be in the world, yeah.
Yeah, so and then the debate, as you know, we don't like debate. Debate is where you try to suppress the other's ideas.
That goes on in the politics a lot.
It goes on, and it's terrible.
Or in business. Yeah.
And so William Isaacs extols us to aspire to first, at least, taking that your ideas may not be final, that there may be more to it, and that we can explore that together or in a group, as a group. And dialogue is where you don't even have sides, where you try to preserve the center of conversation as an integrity as a whole, maybe as a curated topic, maybe as whatever comes to us.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea, the promise is, I don't think you can do a scientific experiment to prove this, but William Isaacs proposes as an ideal that if we treat our positions as not final without certainty, we admit that there may be some uncertainty to what we believe, our assumptions may be wrong, then we can, through conversation with others, create new meanings, see new perspectives, new learnings, and identify new possibilities that might not be as easy to identify if we let the conversation splinter into sides.
Well, that's a way of seeing things. That would be good if you're in a string quartet. It'd be nice everybody joins in. Or like I said before, my friend Art Coleman, he is a jazz guy, and jazz guys want to be in touch with one another and all that sort of thing, and have it work well. Yeah, that's a thing. I don't think it's a big deal, but it's something worth talking about, I guess. And some people are more given to that than others, and so it's a big subject. But we're ready to take up. And is it something relevant to the human condition, or getting to solving on the human condition?
Well, if we are social creatures,
Yeah.
if that's an important component of who we are, now if we can all go naked in the woods and do our own thinking and come back into civilization and allow humanity to achieve the option to make it,
Yeah.
as Bucky might say.
Yeah.
So
Well, to make it, that's interesting. You use that term. So that would be something that is worth getting to. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. What destining might we work toward?
Destiny is another term like that. Yeah.
So for the Greater Philadelphia Thinking Society,
Mhm.
which I'm just one of 4 relatively equal co-organizers,
Mm.
and I'm trying to imagine what can we do. It's a group that gets together every Saturday and Sunday, usually in the morning, to explore some subject. It's a forum for the exploration of ideas.
Okay. Good idea. Yeah.
And we try to have, we use public spaces, so we don't like to have big groups,
Mhm.
but small groups, roughly 10, 12 people, and participatory, inclusive conversations, exploring a subject. And I'm trying to imagine how they can be more effective and more impactful and more meaningful. And so I've been reading William Isaacs's book on dialogue.
Yeah, I don't know him at all.
Yeah, he wrote it in 1999.
Mhm.
He's at MIT, at the Sloan School of Management
Mhm.
at MIT. And the book, in terms of its logical composition, it doesn't impress me. It's not as moving as Synergetics or Bucky's Critical Path books.
I wouldn't think so. Yeah.
And then it's not philosophically deep, but I think he has some good ideas, and I'm paying a lot of attention to them.
Mhm.
And trying to imagine what we need to get every citizen coordinated as a comprehensivist.
Well, that doesn't. Yeah. Okay. That doesn't sound to me like a comprehensivist. It sounds to me like a group think thing.
Well,
and there's a lot of that going on at every board meeting and every corporation. There's a lot of that kind of cooperation going on and everything. I think a comprehensivist is something else again. And it's also whether what you're talking about, are you talking about an agreed assumption? You could put out certain agreements that are A is B, B is C, C is D, and so forth. Then you'd have a terms by which you could get together. But if somebody is in a completely different context, then I don't think it's always possible to get such a harmonious gathering of things. Myself, that's what I think.
So
I don't particularly like groupthink.
Our approach
If
is...
I see that as groupthink. I don't like groupthink.
Our approach is exploring.
Well,
and so when you're exploring, it's very important for everybody to contribute their thoughts and ideas.
well, that's sort of think. It's groupthink. And that's fine. I think it's got a real important place, certainly in the corporate world, or in the world as though it's bureaucratically organized. It's very advantageous. I don't think it's necessarily advantageous in terms of some things that are more important.
Groupthink implies a convergence to an idea. And one of the things we're very careful about is leaving everyone in cognitive dissonance, not coming to conclusions.
I like spontaneity. I don't particularly like the idea of having some formula that you're all going to fit into. It sounds, again, to me, there's different kinds of people in the world. You know, I don't like groupthink. I don't like that kind of a thing myself. Other people do.
Well, what about thinking in groups instead of groupthink?
No, I like to think individually or spontaneously. I like spontaneity, and I don't like formulaic understandings of how people are going to get. I think there's people will get together in terms of, I like people that sort of go off the ranch sometimes and think differently and can think creatively. And it's just, there's different kinds of people. I don't particularly like group talk. That's what you were proposing in a certain, my way of seeing it. You know?
Well,
I like spontaneity. I talk to people on the set where you just do a spontaneous, it comes up, and whatever comes up, it just
But
comes.
usually what comes up is what's in our memory. And so it's the same, you know,
Well,
it's
I
just
find
repeating.
spontaneity. I like spontaneity. And
If it's
so
jazz, but if it's...
no, not if it's jazz. I like spontaneity in everything I do. I like to meet people and talk like we're talking now. I don't like to have a formula. I don't like to have, we're going to celebrate this. It sounds like bureaucracy to me, and that's what I don't particularly like. I never did fit. I was just talking about I had a time in the Army, and I never fit very well because they were telling you what to do and how to do it. Now or the board will tell you, or the people will say, these are the rules of which we're going to follow, or something. I don't like that. Myself, it takes different kinds of people.
The Thinking Society is more oriented to exploring ideas
With other people.
with other people. So
yeah,
you
that's
get
a good thing for people to do if they like it.
Yeah, and what I've been using it for
Yeah, right.
is as a way to curate my self-education program.
Okay, I'm trying to understand that.
Yeah, so you know, I know you like autodidacts.
No, I like spontaneity.
Well, autodidact is...
I never know what I'm going to say when I open my mouth. I don't like structure. I don't like those things. Or I don't like bureaucracy. And that sounds to me like the formula for a well-oiled machine company man. I don't like that. Myself, but it takes all
That's
time.
not my experience
I know,
of these groups. My
yeah.
experience of these groups is
No,
that
it's not
everyone...
Oh, your group, yeah, I'm not talking about your, I'm talking me.
Yeah.
My problem's with me, not with you.
Yeah.
That's a great thing for group think.
I don't
And
think
you can
it's
get things
groupthink.
done.
I think it's thinking
sounds that way to
together,
me.
not groupthink.
Well, okay.
I use it as a way to explore the topics I'm interested in. So I have lots of topics of interest. Some of them relate to Bucky. Some of them are science and philosophy. Very broad. 149 topics I've organized so far. And one of my next topic is going to be on
for this group thing.
Yeah, it's going to be exploring a sentence from Buckminster Fuller's Synergetics.
Good. Yeah, well, if you're going to get something, that's a good one. Yeah.
I don't know if you're familiar with this.
What is it?
The subjective and the objective always and only coexist, and therewith demonstrate the inherent plurality of unity. Inseparable union.
Is that Bucky?
That's Bucky.
I can't understand.
You can't understand that?
No, I can't understand.
It took me a while to understand that. I had to write a long essay to try to understand that.
Yeah, maybe, yeah.
So the way Bucky describes subjective, when I read Synergetics the first time, it occurred to me...
It's a big fat book.
Yeah, he's using the word subjective differently from the way people do in ordinary discourse. He uses subjective to mean that which is a passive thing that you're experiencing, like as a happening, as something that happens to you. It's the word you're subjected to it. Like take gravity, for example. Have you ever been able to avoid gravity? Is that something you can ignore, or does it always subjugate you?
Well, I think gravity is sort of a constant. You know, I don't quite even understand the idea.
It's subjugating, right? Yeah. Have you ever been able to levitate at will?
No.
No, you need an airplane or something to get away from gravity. So that's subjugating. Yeah. That's subjugating. In fact, the way we think of scientific laws is very subjugating. You know, you can't break a scientific law.
Well, laws. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I understand what you mean.
Yeah. So energy can neither be created nor destroyed. There are no exceptions.
Yeah.
So you're subjugated to the fact that energy is going to be constant. It's going to be conserved, no matter what you do. Whether
conservation of energy. Yeah, we've worked out principles of laws of reality that it's good to have in mind. Yeah.
So that's the way Bucky thinks of subjective.
I don't know. He's a very complex guy. I can't say that I knew him well at all. I met him a couple times. But I don't know him well.
You had an hour-long conversation with him.
I did. Very good. Very agreeable. We agreed on we should do away with grading in school. I don't like structures, and I don't like constructures or constrictiveness. You know, I like I like, again, to use the term, I think it's a subversive term to what you're trying to do. I like spontaneity. You know, just start winging it.
And for the objective, Bucky, means to have a purpose, a goal, some intentional experience, like an experiment.
Well, yeah, that, I guess that's a different thing. You're trying to narrow things down. To me, that's narrowing down the thinking process and everything.
Well, we make distinctions, and you know, different people make different distinctions. So I wrote an essay, and I analyzed this quote, and in the end, the one on subjective and objective always and only coexist.
Oh yeah, that's Bucky.
That's Bucky,
right,
and where I ended up with is I ended up that science and the arts always and only coexist.
Well, there's something to be said for that. That's
So I think all knowing, you know, if science is knowing, and if the arts are doing, then in science, in order to know anything, you have to do an experiment to verify that it works, which is sort of the art of doing experimentation, getting nature into a corner, seeing what's really going on.
I thought of that way. When I was young, I went, just a little sidebar, I went to, I had read Thoreau. That's a dangerous thing to do if you're a city kid or something, because, you know, you don't know how to cope with the nature and everything. I'd read him, and I got the idea that nature is so wonderful. And had this Valderie, when you're walking through the forest and the birds are tweeting and all of that. And I went, I was in Alaska the whole summer. I went up to Alaska to get in the wild, Mother Nature. And I went, and I'll cut it short and everything, but I went and I got there. And if you've been to Fort, what's the mountain? Mount McKinley. You have a train. And then they had a little station there, a little thing, coffee, not a big deal or anything. And I was in gym shoes. Stupid. And short sleeve, I guess. But I was just Valderie, and nature and the birdies and everything. And I walked for about 4 days up Mount McKinley and just reveling in how beautiful it was. It was just gorgeous. Got above the trees. It gets to be where you get 3.5 degrees per 1,000 feet. It gets 1,000, you lose a degrees of temperature. And I got up and there were no trees. It got above trees. There were little patches of ice all over. And I'm stupid. I was stupid. I was like 19 or something like that. And all of a sudden, Mother Nature that had been so beautiful, with the birds tweeting and the elk saying hello and singing, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And Thoreau. You know, how wonderful nature is and everything. It all of a sudden changed. And it came from a northeast direction, this awful storm. And it was just a storm that would not let up, and it just came relentlessly. It's a dramatic thing. I wish I had the poetry to make it really real. But it was terrible. And I didn't know what to do because I was stuck. I hadn't told it. It's stupid. I hadn't told anybody I was there. And I just gone off spontaneity. Maybe it's not always a good thing. I like spontaneity. But anyway, I got there, and I had to get down. I had to find my way down the mountain. Slippery rocks. I could have sprained an ankle, and I'd be dead. And it was days. I'd gone over about 4 days. That's a long way. And I couldn't do it. I had to get back, and I had to go down, and it was just hell. And I cursed Mother Nature. I said, she is a mean old hag, that Mother Nature. You know, I was singing the praises of Mother Nature, accommodation with her and everything like that. And I got down, and all I wanted, I got down, and I did just make it, I swear to God. It's like a story. It was real, like something out of Jack London or something. Yeah. And I got down there, and I finally got to this little camp. I think I slept 3 days or something. It had been hours and hours and hours of this. And when I got out, all I wanted to see was cement. I want to see cement everywhere. But that's not a good way to think, you know, because I was wrong. But I don't know if there's any lesson in that at all. But I don't trust Mother Nature.
So it's the paradox is what strikes me about it. You have the love of nature going up.
Yeah.
And then the realization that nature is fickle.
I'll use a term. No, she's a bitch. I got it down to where Mother Nature is just a stupid bitch, which is the wrong way to feel. I was wrong.
Yeah.
And I didn't have the wit to blame myself for being so stupid. But it was spontaneous, my doing that. And I like that spontaneity. I really hold with the spontaneity. I don't like structure. I hated the Army. It's all structure and the corporation and so forth. Yeah.
It's a model
It's
a model for all the existential threats we face. That's a personal existential threat.
Some people fit into groups better than others. There's some people who are group people, you know.
Well, I was looking at just the idea of the challenge of it as personal survival. And, you know, we have a climate challenge.
Like that happen? That was
no,
really, I was at death's door.
But we have a climate challenge that's an existential threat for humanity.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yellowstone is a super volcano that could blow. That's a challenge no one's even working on.
You know, could I introduce something
Sure.
there in that case? About I don't like groupthink because it just becomes all the same and everything. Like for whatever it's worth, there's different kinds of people in the world. But on the climate change thing, I'm interested in it. It's a very important thing, and there's a lot of environmentalists that are interested. And you can put a lot of blame on the capitalists who are running the world and getting oil and just messing up the environment, creating all these kind of things with temperature and that kind of thing. You can get all involved in that. And the thing, as I read the record, I like to do things individually, you know. And I had read the record as I do. I keep busy intellectually and everything. And I'd read the thing, and I had found Jim Hansen was the one who really early on brought about looking at this climate change thing. Then you got a lot of groupthink now, people who love nature and all of that. They tend to be that kind of people, you know, that it's the man messing up the environment and that's causing it, and it's too bad, it's a groupthink thing that's coming and everything. But what he said, and what I agree with, the one question, for whatever it's worth, it's the odd thing. I don't like the groupthink thing, okay? But anyway, his thing was, and he's still there, he's still saying it. He was the original one who Gore was there early. That was turn of the century he brought it up. Nobody else was thinking about it. But he brought it up. And what he wanted to say was that the answer that really we could do in terms of addressing it seriously, rather than getting into the groupthink about how wonderful nature is. I don't think nature's so wonderful particularly. I like civilization as it happens and everything. And his thing was that the solution is we should use atomic energy to provide the electricity to the whole world that we have an overwhelming abundance of in the Trident submarines of the United States fleet in the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean. We should take the energy to run the electric needs of the planet. We could do it easily with a couple of those submarines down there. We should take energy from the atomic process and use that to get the energy. That's the solution to it. Nobody wants to hear that because groupthink says we're all going to be Mother Nature singing praise.
It's a short-term solution because
that's not short-term, that's long-term.
No, there isn't that much uranium on the planet.
Not uranium. I'm talking about the damn Trident submarines
that
are in the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean under the control of the United States government, and they are species lethal in their capability to destroy the planet. But we can't touch into it to bring the electricity because we believe some sort of groupthink thing about Mother Nature.
Well,
okay?
But there's a broader question than how much uranium-238 is there on the planet. I've seen reports we might only have a couple hundred years of it. You know, if we bank our future on something that gets us through 100 or 200 years, is that really a good idea?
Well, yeah, you want to get the readings of how much power there is? That's the only thing, in my way of thinking, I'm worried. We
well,
were
solar
talking
energy,
early hours.
there's a lot of solar energy.
Well, okay, yeah, but I'm talking about the electricity problem, right?
Yeah.
And we were starting the program last time we did and everything like that. We were looking at it and everything. But if you were to take that, you could produce far more electricity than ever be needed. And what we're doing is we're putting it all down in the bottom of the ocean on submarines that have the ability to kill us. And we don't want to say that something so evil as that can be used for something good, so you don't have to clutter up the landscape with windmills and stuff. So that's not group, that's groupthink. That's what everybody's thinking.
The question is, what should we do?
Well, I think we ought to use atomic energy. I think we ought to go back to Jim Hansen. He's the one who originally brought it up, and take him seriously, rather than in a groupthink kind of way, as what we're doing now.
Bucky
by
disagrees.
The environmentalists.
Bucky thought that we shouldn't use nuclear.
Well, I don't know exactly what Bucky thought. I don't know.
Yeah, he said,
myself, yeah.
Bucky said that the only safe place for nuclear power is 92 million miles away from Earth.
Well, that's a nice thought, but they're there. We talked last program we did that we have an ability to liberate the planet. We could make everybody and all the ecology a have. There could be a place for everybody to live, the means to get there, to get what they need, all the needs that never has been able to be met. We can't, but we got this thing in our mind, no. For one to win, somebody else has to lose. If you're going to win, somebody else is going to, that's ironclad group thing of the whole, that's the corporate rule, and mostly the national
that seems to be
whole.
A fundamental principle of economic accounting systems.
Yes, and it's out of date with what we need.
My debt is your surplus.
Well, that's intrinsic to the system that is in place and is thought to be what we have to have is zero sum. That's the very basic of economic theorizing. For one to win, somebody else has to lose. There's never enough. There cannot ever be enough.
Now, what Stephanie Kelton is proposing,
I don't know anything about
you don't know Stephanie Kelton? She's an economist that's doing a lot of promoting of this modern monetary theory.
I don't know. Is that
it's based on Keynes. Keynes, yeah. Sorry. Modern monetary theory. I'm not an expert. I never studied economics.
Keynes, Keynes was a major producer of our economic theory.
And Keynes knew that the way money is created is through government, through the Fed. So, and what Stephanie Kelton suggests is that when the government goes in debt, that provides a surplus for you and me. That the government goes into debt by buying our services or giving us handouts like corporate welfare or
the corporate
welfare for
is different than something. Yeah,
but it's the government stimulating the economy by giving various incentives. And that creates the economy. And so the way she describes it is she says when the government lends money to a company or pays you for your services, that's a government debt. And that as the government goes into debt, the economy of the U.S. grows. In fact, it seems to me,
there's a lot of that crazy accounting,
and as I understand it, the government through an act of Congress can produce as much debt as they want.
Yeah, the Full Employment Act of 1946 was the major thing after the Second War, and they have a problem because they don't. It used to be you needed laborers. I'm from Detroit, for whatever it's worth. We lived on 16th Street, and my grandmother was the first woman ever to graduate from the University of Michigan Medical College in 1888. She broke the glass ceiling, and the word was she was a real bitch, which you're supposed to laugh. Okay. Anyway, but and Ford, when he was a youngster on 16th Street where she lived, used to tinker in her garage, Henry Ford. He became the man who put the whole world on wheels. And he put it down with the fossil fuels and all that kind of stuff. And it brought all the automobiles and ways of getting around and that sort of thing. And so you got to have some way of being able to have those kind of things developed. I don't quite remember what it is I had in mind by bringing that up.
Yeah, it's how the economy works and
I'm very interested in the economy.
And at a macro scale, it seems to be that our economy is a function of government debt.
Well, it's a function of it's a remnant of feudalism. We used to have, I'm Anglo-Saxon, we used to have kings, and kings ruled, and kings killed people, and kings ruled, and it was a bloody struggle from Caesar on down.
But how is the money supply created?
Well, the money supply, then I don't know. I don't know how it was done. Bushels of wheat or pigs that you could slaughter or whatever.
Well,
or carrion you could gather. It was a pretty grim way of being.
As I understand,
there wasn't much, and whatever it was went to the few, and that's still going on.
What I understand,
it all goes to the few, a few people.
You know, in the Roman Empire, they had currency. But when the Roman Empire fell, in Europe, I mean, Istanbul continued, but, well, Constantinople continued.
Right.
But in Europe, they continued using the Roman money, but there was no money, so they did it all in accounting. You know, there weren't gold coins anymore because the Roman Empire had fallen. But they still used as a unit of account. They had a debt economy.
Yeah, I think, and they got things going down in
but
Venice and stuff.
Then in the 1600s, money came back in. And I think the Bank of England started printing money as debt, and so cash finally started coming back in.
Yeah, that's true.
That seems to be when the economy started going, and it was created by government debt, as I understand it.
Well, that was part of it, but it also created automobiles. Everybody got an automobile, and they could drive, and they could have an expanded life and everything like that. And it was progress and everything, and they got a better standard of living out of that kind of a situation, and it improves it. But now it's just the same. And what's happened now in the modern experience, we're not talking about history so much now, the time we are in. We're talking about something we tried to talk last time, this time, something different than just history. History is a nightmare of injustice from which we're attempting to awaken, not to reify the institutions out of back. You can study it, but it's like studying Cro-Magnon caves or something, as far as that's concerned. But it's just a thing like that, and we get down to the point where what is happening. You got your capitalism, you have the socialism thing where they do that, and then what's happening is it's getting down now to where the problem, Mr. Bezos and all that kind of stuff, and it's getting now down to the point where the way in which things are being produced increasingly and exponentially even in a way that doesn't require slaves. We're all slaves to the people who own all the assets, all the corporate assets. The financing is all done in a way where it just builds more ownership into the few. It's just a tiny little group of people who are everything, just like the days of Rome. It's like that now. Yeah. And so what we need to have is some sort of a way, because labor and the labor theory of value, which informing all the left, out of Russia and that is the labor that creates the wealth. And that was a nice thing Roosevelt did well, because those people were so badly treated. But that's what's happening. And now it's displacing labor. It's going to displace labor massively. You're going to have an alternate way of distributing income other than wage slavery. Everybody particularly is a wage slave.
Why?
They're going to have to some way, and you're going to.
I don't know whether we want wage labor. Even the Democratic Socialists value wage labor.
Well, no, they're over. That's their philosopher's stone, is the labor theory of value. That's the philosopher's stone of the commies and the leftists. That's their philosopher's stone. We're working and we deserve a good wage and all of that, but it's being eliminated. The need for having wages. So they're going to have to have an alternate way.
The need, you're saying the need's being eliminated, meaning that we have the ability to sustain most people with just a few laborers. You're going to be able to produce product
without people, laborers, producing it. It's going to be produced by machines and computers and advanced cybernetics. And you don't need people. So the wages that used to be serfs and still are in all reality for the way the world's set up, everybody's just practically a serf on an estate where a few people own it all and then fight each other at the national level.
So Bucky said wealth was know-how as well as material, right? So couldn't it be that we could create service industry jobs like theater?
Well, if you want to, you could. I don't think
you could make a video game and people could play video games all day. And so why is it that labor has to vanish just because of automation?
Yeah, by and large, they used to when they went in Ford's line.
Yeah.
They come out of the mountains. They had to go stand all day long, turning up. And that's the way the economy works.
So I just don't.
So their labor is counted as producing the car, but it's the capital assets that produced it all, and that's all owned by a tiny class. They ought to expand ownership of capital interest as a way of distributing buying power to the masses in order to clear the market of the good things it can produce when it doesn't need people as slaves.
Right.
We're essentially slaves to the people who run things.
So, but you still have some need for producers.
Mostly they have to be consumers of what can be produced by automation.
Well, we need food.
And they have to do that. They can't form capital in a way where it's only people who have past savings that you can, since Venice. You have to have somebody who's got past savings, make an investment, it's going to pay for itself out of its future earnings, not from past savings. They've got it. So they got the advantage. They always have.
So
even from Rome, even from Venice and that.
So
you're going to have an alternate way of producing, of expanding capital ownership to the masses of the capital instruments that are producing, and they're going to have to do it in their own interest in the end, because they're going to have people with money to clear the market of the thing that all the machines, without the people being needed to produce anything, are able to buy the good life that is now being able to be made available to it. So that's a problem, a group thing.
Well, it could be done. Couldn't the government just give everyone capital ownership?
Socialism. They could tax it. They could try and tax it.
Well,
but
they
could
give us capital. Couldn't they? Give us stock or something.
Yes,
they could
exactly
buy stock
what they should be doing.
In the S&P 500.
The employee stock ownership plan is a great idea. They should form capital in a way where the masses of the people are able to earn what the capital instrument produces out of its future earnings, not out of past savings. That's something that has to be given to everybody as a way of get buying power into the hands of the body politic to clear what the robotic system can turn out.
And
that's not being even addressed. It's all
the motivation,
socialism, capitalism.
The motivation of human progress at that point would be what?
Well, to lead a good life.
To lead a good life.
Yeah. And you don't have to do anything for it. No, that's thought of as really against some sort of law. You don't have to get out and toil. You don't have to get out and break the laws. It can be done by machines.
Is that anarchism?
No, I don't think so. No, it's something that is winked at, but it's not really done. It's still just a matter of these big behemoth people heading the corporations, have all the assets, they get all the wealth, and then they fight on national terms one with the other, and all the bullshit going on with the Middle East and all that kind of stuff are people who are intimidating each other like dons in a street fight in Brooklyn.
But I think people have a moral obligation. Kenneth Taylor is a philosopher. Kenneth Taylor is a philosopher at Stanford University.
Okay,
he's brilliant. I really like Kenneth Taylor.
Thank you.
And Kenneth Taylor argues that that human beings are moral. I forget his word. Moral mongers, moral creatures.
Well,
that fundamentally we moralize.
Okay. Well, yeah, they have a morality.
And that
Yeah,
moralizing
that's a good thing,
is telling people what we think they should do, and them probably telling us what they think we should do.
Well, yeah, morality is important.
Yeah. So. In economics, we I don't know what possible moralities there are, but one morality is that people should earn their right to live.
Well,
That
I'm not sure
you challenge them with an existential threat of death,
starvation,
and starvation,
well, that's exactly
if they don't do what.
Yes. What do you think has happened to the serfs all through history? They die in the street. Yeah, they let them die in the street. Now they've got some housings that they can get down within reach, and we could get housing for everybody overnight.
But
practically, but we can't because we're stuck with the old way of thinking about the left says labor theory of value. They stick with that, and the labor is being in value in terms of the actual production. If the thing is going as it seems to be going, robotized, they don't need people anymore to produce on an assembly line the products. That's how they used to have, and they could even go on strike and say, if we don't go, you won't get your car. And they could get a fight for more wages and all that. That's a history. But now, what they have to do, but they've kept the getting of investment in an item, an enterprise that's going to pay for itself out of its future earnings. That's the way people make money. They're not paying for it out of past savings. The schleps have to pay it out of past savings. But if what they have to do is have a system. Louis Kelso is the main guy who says, have an ESOP, employee stock owners, but they ignore that.
It would be great. I mean,
they ignore it in the kind of dimension that it demands. And it's going to be forced on us, or else we're going to have economic calamity.
Unlike some people, like our current president, I wasn't given millions of dollars to make my start with.
Wait a minute. You're trying to tell me you're not of the manner born? You have the bearing of somebody of a manner born. Doesn't he, everybody? This man has the I'm playing with you.
But if I had one of...
But you do have the bearing of to the manner born.
If someone presented me with a stock ownership policy that gave me the ability, some millions of dollars to get started with.
You'd get a piece of stock in, say, Mr. Musk.
Oh, in
driverless cars. And then when driverless cars, the
driverless cars are hype, aren't they?
No, I don't think so. I think they're going to be safer than some of these people that get in them drunk.
The people in the Linux users group I was talking to just last week.
Yeah, right.
They tell me that there's a new report. There's a new report out. I haven't seen this, but I understand that there's a new report that says that driverless cars don't work in the rain.
Well, maybe that would be an inconvenience.
If they don't work in the rain,
you'd be fine driving around the Mojave Desert.
That's where they all are.
Yeah, right.
So, it gets into artificial intelligence and machine learning. I've been doing some study in machine learning.
Okay, tell me.
And machine learning is based on past experience. So what they do is they teach these cars by giving them the experience.
You're talking about the self-driving cars?
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
And they're using machine learning. It's a statistical technique where you look at past data and you teach, this is an object, an obstacle, this is a person. Self-driving car killed a person not too long ago. So how did that happen? Well, that particular situation wasn't in the training.
No. Did anybody say, oops?
So there's a fundamental problem with machine learning.
Say, oops.
There's a fundamental problem with machine learning. And that is machine learning is only based on the past. So you might be able to get it to, every person in a business suit doesn't get hit. But the first time a clown shows up that wasn't in the machine learning training, the computer doesn't know what to do.
It's not, the world is not, I'm going to do it without laughing if I can. The world is not just. The world is unjust. Always has been. but we have a chance to make it become just for us and even for our progeny. For the first time in 200,000 years of this species existence.
But I think
what's going on.
I think a more important question is what is the intelligence? What is intelligence? How do we think we've got machine intelligence, but we don't. What we have is learning from the past, learning from a training set.
Yeah, well,
in order to have intelligence, you have to be able to imagine the not yet existing.
Yeah.
And then, not only do you have to imagine the not yet existing, you have to imagine how to make the not yet existing real.
Yeah, that's a challenge.
You can't do that with machine learning. There is no algorithm in machine learning that takes you from machine learning cannot get to the not yet existing, and it has no way to go from the not yet existing to making real the not yet existing.
Oh boy, that's getting to be a conundrum, huh?
Design is the process.
Design is really important.
Design is the process of imagining the not yet existing.
Yeah, right.
And making it real.
Well, that's tricky. So if you're going to make an investment that's going to pay for itself out of, a lot of the investments you make think is going to pay for itself out of the future earnings. They don't pay out of the future earnings at all. You just go bust and you're broke. That happens all the time at Bud Abbott and Lou Costello movies.
Machine learning is driving by looking out the rear view mirror.
Yeah, they drive.
Design is where you're on a train track. And you're laying the track ahead of your train.
Right. Lay that track.
There is no machine learning algorithm that can tell you how to lay the track ahead of the train before we get there. It's all rear view mirror.
Driving into the future with the eye fixed firmly on the rear view mirror. That's humanity.
Machine learning is not going to get us into the future.
Really?
Design is going to get us into the future.
Right. And does design, good design, come out of future thinking, or the human being is amazing, really good. We're at a major crossroad. It's really. Do you think? Are you optimistic, pessimistic for the human prospect? You think we're going to make it? We got the ability to liberate the entire Homo sapiens species in a gigantic jam session where everybody's got what they need or want to be comfortably able to do what it is they want, with access to the world's store of human knowledge and all that sort of thing. And everybody's involved in a great big giant jam session with Satchmo at the horn or something. And we got the ability to do that now, or we got the ability to wipe it all out. What do you want?
But Bucky was right. It's touch and go.
Yeah, right.
And I think we've got to have the courage to look at machine learning and other so-called panaceas.
Oh, yeah.
Eleanor Ostrom,
her
work is amazing.
Really? Who is
she? won the
where?
Nobel Prize in Economics. She's died now, sad to say.
Sorry,
and too young, cancer. But I forget. But she won the Nobel Prize and only had like 4 or 5 years to build on that.
Yes.
But the body of work that they awarded her that Nobel Prize in Economics on is absolutely fantastic. She are no panaceas. That's Eleanor Ostrom's great lesson. No panaceas.
I'm trying to think of a quote. I don't know what. How, if it seems to me we're going to need something camouflaged as a panacea or actual panacea to get past groupthink.
What we need is
where
design.
They just accept the past.
We need design.
Yeah, you need design. That's a way to get to the future. Yeah, right. That's the futurist thinking. That's very good. That's Fuller. He's just out there in the lead. He's just
Fuller's
wonderful.
Design Science Revolution.
Yeah, right. Couldn't agree more.
And the world game ethic, the challenge to make the world work for 100% of humanity in the shortest possible time.
A jam session. Jam session with Satchmo playing horn, you know?
Yeah, but to do it with spontaneous cooperation and without ecological damage or the disadvantage of anyone.
I'll sign that. Where do I sign? Where do I sign? Yeah. Sounds very familiar.
So you need the ethics. You need the ethics, and you need the design. And the question is, how do we design it? You had some great ideas about the design of the economic system, but if we can't make it real, It's just a not yet existing that may or may not ever become real.
Well, that's a thought, isn't it? You know, because I don't know, how does the
How do you make it
might
real?
Well, for one thing, recognize just how real, just that we're. Do you think people really realize, or humanity realizes the incredible, unique situation humanity is at this time after 10,000 generations? This is the defining generation that's on the planet. We don't get thinking that way. We think in terms of the the gross national product and the tax cut and the politics and all the rest of it, because that's the way we've always thought. But we've got to be thinking future.
Every generation is, there's a great book I really like, The Design Way by Harold G. Nelson.
I like that first name.
And Eric Stolterman.
Okay, I don't know. Yeah.
And the first sentence on page 1 of their book, they say
Page 1, yes.
Genesis is ongoing.
Yeah, okay, that's good. Yeah.
And so I think it's each generation has to do the genesis of their generation.
But I think
because
this
Genesis
generation
is ongoing.
No, I don't want to accept that. This generation is unique. This is not any other generation in the past.
You're right.
And that we could have been born in the 6th century and eating carrion.
Now,
or barely surviving your teen years or something. It's been an ugly, ugly, scarcity-laden situation that we've experienced for 200,000 years. It's time for us to give ourselves all a break, and let's break out and have a liberation rather than annihilation.
This generation is important because it's now. And now is always the most important genesis that's ongoing.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
But tomorrow's now will be an important ongoing genesis too.
Yeah.
And Eric Severeid said, something to the effect of the problems of today, today's solutions will be tomorrow's problems. That we may solve the problem to survive today, but it's just kicking the can down the street, because tomorrow they're going to have to fix the problems we made.
Again, back up if we could for a minute, because we're not just talking about even just something that was horrible, the Second World War, much less the First World War, much less the Civil War. Didn't affect much of the world, but it was there. It gets worse and worse. We're now talking quite literally. That's why I'm worried about the tridents. That's under the control of the United States military. Okay? That's like Caesar with his Roman legions or something like that. There's studies, I don't know. So they should be made very clear that they are, and just yesterday, it was not, they could never, there was nothing, anything like what could be lethality for the whole species. That was not possible until Helen Caldicott, God bless her, but anything, she'd bring it up. But that's now the reality. We can wipe out and stop evolution up this hominoid line, which has never been available to us for 200,000 years.
So, this
is something unique we're at, not just a group think about coming out of history.
From Eleanor Ostrom's work on No Panaceas, she studied with a team of political scientists, social scientists.
Good. There should be more
huge
like
team.
That. Yeah.
They analyze all the known findings on projects, environmental catastrophes, losing the cod fishery off New England, all these things, and they determine that there are situations where government totally messes it up, and then there are other situations where private industry totally messes it up, the absolute ruin. And there seems to be, what she found is that there's no panacea. What she recommends is that we need multi-layers of interaction. You need government, you need private industry, you need civil society, you need individuals, all building trust, working together to try to identify a reasonable way to manage that resource, whether it's a water resource or a fishery or forest.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah,
and
you're right. Yeah.
and so she calls it multilateral. I'm forgetting the name.
Well, you could call it good common sense too. Which
But
isn't a
most
bad
of the
trait.
the politicians will come in and they'll say government can solve all your problems.
Yeah, well, they'll do. They
and
will.
usually that doesn't work.
Yeah.
But then the libertarians will come in and they'll say private enterprise will solve all your problems.
Have you noticed,
that doesn't work
either. Have you noticed
either.
that on your television screen and radio?
That doesn't work either. You need multiple organizations, multiple people in. And she's documented several cases, like in Spain, Eleanor Ostrom, Ostrom.
Sounds Scandinavian.
She was U.S. And there have been several. In Spain, they looked at water systems.
Yeah.
There are water systems in Spain that have been managed on a sustainable basis for 1,000 years.
Really? Is that
true? And the social scientists went in and said, "How do they do that? Because we don't know how to do that."
That'd be pretty damn good.
And it was a very intricate system of checks and balances.
You're talking about water systems?
Yeah.
In Spain?
Yeah, in Spain. I haven't
the great
read
things
that.
happened in Andalusia.
So there are ways to do this, but it needs design, which, as Nelson and Stolterman say, it's like laying track on as we're moving along. That's the way we design our future.
Okay.
And it's difficult.
It's a heck of a time to have been born into, isn't it?
Yeah.
You could have been born into the 15th century. It took 2,000 years to invent a tack. Now every day is changed. It is exciting in its change. But there's a lot that has to be done. There's a lot of questions to be addressed and everything. And you're doing a great job with your situation down in Philadelphia. And I congratulate you. And I'm really glad you've been able to share this with the Manhattan audience and maybe wherever it can reach out to, right? Okay. So I guess we had a minute or two left and everything like that. But we're almost coming to the end. But it's, I don't know. It's sort of interesting to have been born into these times, I think. Wouldn't it have been something to have been so? I don't know. What do you think? Would you want to have been born into any other time?
Oh, these are great times. And I like the way Kenneth Taylor puts it in a moral frame. He says, your life is given to you as a problem and as a project.
Right.
As a problem, what shall I be? And as a project, how shall I become?
Yeah, that's good.
Those are the ethical situation. We're all given our lives. And therefore design. Design as the way to live your life and the way to help structure our civilization for ongoing success.
And to have the word design linked with a man named Buckminster Fuller is a very, very good idea for all of us, including some of the youth coming along, ought to pick up on his enormous contributions, as well as the society at large. Don't you agree?
Indeed.
Yeah. We ought to get a listing of the people that are in that coterie and everything, because it's just an incredible time. Well, listen, thank you so much. It's so good to talk. Your pleasure to have this gentleman, this guy from Philly, the man from Philadelphia, the Philadelphia story. And thanks a lot and everything. So good. Give my best to Mr. Zeloff, okay?
Will do.
And tell him I want to be in touch with him. He's a great guy and everything.
Yeah.
And Buckminster Fuller is a hero of both you and I, and that's a good place for us to stop this talking now and say, everybody ought to read Bucky Fuller. I agree with that, and catch on to his thinking. He was a real leader of men and women and children and dogs and cats.
Yeah, and design science.
Lizards.
DesignScience.risd.edu has a symposium in September, and you go there. There's a call for proposals due March 31st to contribute to design science.
Good deal. Good deal.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Thanks for viewing. Okay, that's the end, I guess, now for today and everything. And so that's it.
Great.
Yeah. But Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. Now I'm going to have to go upstairs and get this thing copied.